Morning guys, I'm back on my local riverbank. Now anyone that watched my previous video about photographing damselflies and dragonflies will know I was on this riverbank a few days ago actually, and the idea is to get into the water and that way I can get closer to the dragonflies and damselflies, because sometimes on the riverbank, if they're right over there and you're standing on the bank, there's no way you can get close enough with a macro lens. And I mentioned that sometimes I use my 200 to 500mm zoom, so I can still get a nice shot of those dragonflies, but it won't be a really big magnification. So by getting in the river, I can use my macro lens and I can get a much closer composition and a much bigger magnification. But again, anybody that watched my previous vlog will realise that I had some old waders and they leaked, so I couldn't spend as much time in the river as I wanted to. So I'm back today, new waders. So I'm really pleased with these. Hopefully these won't leak and I can spend more time getting close to the dragonflies and the damselflies. And I've already spotted two banded demoiselles. Now it's very windy today, well not very windy, but windier than I would like. But because I'm going to get down to the riverbank level, it'll be a little bit more sheltered there, so I think it'll be okay. And as I say, I've already spotted two banded demoiselles just sort of perching on some reeds. So fingers crossed. I'm going to slip into the water now and see what I can find. So I'll speak to you soon, guys. The good news is my new waders didn't leak, so that was fantastic because it gave me a lot more time in the water and I was able to find more insects to photograph. Now it was mainly banded demoiselles that I found, and that was great because they're fantastic subjects, they look superb. And I was able to get, as you can see in the pictures you've just looked at, I was able to get much closer to these insects and get some really close-up shots, focusing in on their eyes. So it was basically the plan worked because I was able to get down to the river level. I could spot insects that you couldn't even see from the riverbank. So it gave me a completely different perspective, and it wasn't as windy down by the river, but it was still a bit breezy, to be honest. As the weather conditions weren't exactly ideal for macro photography, it was very windy, my subjects, so the banded demoiselles, were bouncing around like anything on the reed beds. There was a lot of movement. So I was shooting with a higher shutter speed than I would normally shoot with, and I was shooting with between 1/400th of a second and 1/500th of a second. And what that basically means is it enabled me to make sure I didn't have any camera shake, but more importantly stop any subject movement. Now, because I was in the water, I wanted to keep my equipment very simple, the setup simple, so I only had my macro lens and my camera body. I didn't have any flash units with me, so I couldn't add any supplementary light, which isn't a problem because today's modern cameras are very good at high ISO performance, and what I had to do in order to maintain that type of shutter speed and have a high enough F number to give me the depth of field I needed, I was shooting with high ISO numbers. Anything between ISO 800 and ISO 1600. Now, as I say, it's not a big problem because modern cameras are so good at high ISO performance, especially full frame camera bodies, and my Nikon Z6 II is a full frame body, so it's good on high ISO performance. However, you know, if you can, the lower the ISO number you shoot with, the better the quality of the image. So next time I'm in the river, I may well take a flash unit with me and add a bit of supplementary light so I can shoot with a lower ISO number and get a slightly better quality shot. I'm having an absolutely brilliant time this morning. I'm getting so many shots of the banded demoiselles that I wouldn't have got, from angles that I wouldn't have got unless I'd got into the water, so it's been a real success. The other thing I've been doing as well is experimenting with the autofocus on my camera and lens, because normally when I'm doing macro photography I'll manually focus and then I'll rock backwards and forwards towards the subject until it snaps into sharp focus, and I find that's a really successful way to manually focus for macro photography. But as the autofocus on modern cameras is getting so much, or has got so much better, I thought I'd have an experiment with the AF, and it's working really well actually. Now I haven't gone in super close, so what I've got is like the banded demoiselle, big in the frame but with a little bit of room around it. And it's focused really well on that demoiselle. So what I'm going to do now is get really close, sort of almost like a head and shoulders type shot, and see if the autofocus still picks up and still locks on successfully. And the other thing I want to have a little crack at is a little bit of handheld slow motion video footage, and if that comes out all right, I'll put that on this video as well. So yeah, speak to you soon, guys. In this series of pictures, all these images were taken using my 200 to 500mm zoom lens. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, and indeed this video, a big zoom can be really good for insect photography. You can get to places where you couldn't get to with a macro lens. You know, if you can't get close enough with a macro lens, maybe you can stand further back and use a super zoom. You know, a 200 to 500, a 100 to 400, something like that. And as you can see, we've got some nice images here. You won't get anywhere near as close or as big an image of the subject using a super zoom as you will with a macro lens. And if you look at the previous pictures at the beginning of this video, I'm really close to that banded demoiselle because I'm using a macro lens. Whereas these pictures, I can't get close enough because the minimum focusing distance for a zoom lens is much longer or much greater than the minimum focusing distance for a macro lens, of course. So it means I can't get so close with a super zoom as I can with a macro lens, so I don't get such a big reproduction size of my subject. But I don't think that's a problem, because it's nice sometimes to show the environment that that insect is living in. So with the super zoom, yes, I can't get such a big enlargement of my subject, in this case banded demoiselles again, but I show a bit of the environment. And of course these days as well, I don't think it is such a huge problem either, because you know, cameras have got huge resolution, so it means we can crop the picture post-production, and then again that insect will look bigger in the frame. So yes, if you want a life-size one-to-one reproduction of the insect you're photographing, you will need a macro lens, but you can quite successfully use a super zoom for macro or close-up style photography, and that's what I've done here. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this video was how the distance from the camera to the subject affects the depth of field of the picture. And if you look at this first image, I'm a little bit further away than I am when you see the second image. And because I'm further away from the picture, you'll see that the background is not sharp, but it's more well defined than the second picture, and it looks a bit messy. By coming in closer, I reduce the depth of field of that picture, and my background is a lot softer, a lot smoother, and a lot less distracting. And on both these images I'm using the same F number, so the thing that's changed is how close I am to the dragonfly that I'm photographing. I just wanted to mention once again, I did mention this on my first video when I used the old waders. I know this river really well, so I'm not suggesting anybody else sort of come out, jump into the river to take macro shots. I think, you know, any body of water, whether that's a river, a lake or the sea, is potentially a hazardous environment. I know this river very well. I've kayaked it for years, and I know where the shallow bits are and the deep bits are. So I'm not suggesting that anybody else should do this, but it's working for me. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have enjoyed it, if you give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And if you haven't already subscribed, if you can consider subscribing to the channel, that would also be brilliant. And if you've got any comments about wildlife photography in general, or macro and close-up photography, just leave them in the comment section below. So thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you on my next video. Bye for now.